seems to me you better get used to guns at an early age as you get used to a knife and fork.
That's the entirely wrong attitude. You don't get used to guns, you get rid of them.
Yes, that's a politically correct piece of...
It's not politically correct. It's just sensible. It's just trying to say that we shouldn't... It's not rubbish. Yes. Why is it good to put people owning guns? I'm not talking about the army and the police.
There's no particular merit in children having guns, but there's no particular harm, it seems to me, if they want to play with the things.
If you thought the September the 11th toy was in bad taste, and here's another version of it for those who missed it first time round, brace yourself for some more politically incorrect toys. Recently in Turkey, a toy manufacturer came up with the idea of marketing the world's tyrants as dolls. Every child could have a dictator in their own home, and Turkish parents were persuaded that they would help teach their children about life and war. But tasteless toys are not new, because human beings have been celebrating violence in toy form since time immemorial, as this bizarre relic of World War I demonstrates. Yes, it's the exploding trench kit, which allowed little boys to create a playful version of what was happening to their fathers, for real, in Flanders fields on the Western Front.
A mechanical toy manufacturer created what was called the exploding trench, where you put toy soldiers in with a cap mechanism, the whole thing blew up. It was withdrawn from shops at the time on the basis of sort of taste. But the idea at the height of the First World War, men dying in the Flanders mud, you could buy a toy called Exploding Trench, were close on a phenomenal disaster.
Forward now to the 1960s, and what could be more wholesome than Action Man, fighting for the American principles of freedom, justice and liberty.
Action Man!
Now with eagle eyes that actually move. On the lookout for action. Up in the mountains.
But he too had a darker side.
Action Man was first developed in 1966. It originated from a toy that was being developed in America called G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe wouldn't work, so Action Man came in and played up on the whole sort of Second World War militaristic sort of line. It was developed by a plastics manufacturer called Bill Pugh, who also claimed to fame was the Jif Squeezy Lemon bottle and also the plastic tomato, which was dispensing ketchup at the time with 1,000 sort of roadside calves. And it had some incredibly politically incorrect uniforms, one of which was the Stormtrooper, complete with boots, Sten gun, and it seemed to fit very nicely with the Action Man scar. You just think now, how politically incorrect could that be? But of course, boys at the time wanted an enemy to play with, and they needed the Stormtrooper for their good old British Tommy model to beat the living daylights out of.
Moving arm, a couple of moving arms, a couple of moving legs. But I suppose Action Man, you know, there's nothing very much moving around the crutch at all to suggest a real Action Man.
As storm clouds gather over Mrs. Rogers' garden, the Action Man gang assemble for the big parade. It's an impressive display of military muscle. And speaking of muscle, just look at Action Man's new fully posable physique. It's chest out and eyes right as the top brass take the salute. They know that whatever the task, Action Man with his dynamic new physique is ready for action.
Perhaps I shouldn't really say this, but I can't help but think that when I occasionally walk around Soho these days, there seem to be an enormous number of people, men walking around, who've modelled themselves on Action Man, who actually walk in this sort of Action Man way, who make sort of gestures, who have pecs a bit like Action Man, who try to make their chin stick out like Action Man. There are thousands of would-be Action Men walking around Soho.
I never really liked Action Man very much. And I don't know why, there's something sort of slightly homoerotic about it, and there's something a little bit sinister about it. And the idea that you would take the top off this guy and he'd reveal his rippling muscles and this clean shaven chest, and it wasn't for me.
Gay men. Perhaps you might give a gay man an Action Man doll as a present. He might approve of that, and I think that would be a nice present to give someone. In fact, they have now perfectly anatomical dolls for gay men. I'll go no further.
In the olden days, of course, childhood wasn't all about having fun. Kids were expected to spend their formative years developing the skills they'd need in later life by learning how to blow each other to pieces.
Flying attack squadrons off his carrier deck. landing a helicopter strike force. Counting down to blast off for the moon. To a boy and his Meccano, all things are possible. A boy and his Meccano is a boy living in a man's world. For his hands can work wonders of real engineering, make hundreds of rugged working models. A boy and his Meccano turns a boy's world into a man's world. Meccano, for your boy.
We're supposed to live in sexually ambivalent days. It's a wonder, really, there is much sexual ambivalence around in adulthood when children from the age of 2 are just being given gendered toys. 98% of toys given to children who are 3 and older are gendered. In other words, people can pick them out and say, that's for a boy and that's for a girl. Blimey, that's socialising.
Appalling as these gender-biased toys are, Wayne and Kylie have it easy compared to the role play that George and Mildred had to endure back in the days when Britannia still ruled the waves.
That grand old game of mothers and fathers has taken a practical turn. It actually become part of the training at an Empire school. Better lay an extra place in case George brings home a friend from the club. The tired businessman returns from the city absolutely fagged out. But what happens? Just nothing. Say, isn't dinner ready yet? I'm starving. You're in the way, George. Come over here. And to think that he's supposed to be the head of the house. Feed the brute, that's the idea. After all, it is a change from drinking.
If children's toys are designed to prepare their owner for real life, our next product will propel them swiftly to the terminal cancer ward. The smoking baby.
Which is a ceramic doll that has a cigarette, which is actually an incense stick, stuck in its mouth. And the legend underneath, remember, real babies don't smoke.
Of course, real babies also cannot read, which makes the health warning on the box somewhat futile.
I can't imagine anything that's got any worse taste. Smoking baby. Well, how many moral problems do you want to cause in one hit?
These highly collectible stickers were a parody of the Cabbage Patch Dolls and could be seen in most playgrounds during the 1980s. Parents and teachers soon noticed the extraordinarily grim forms of mutilation, violence and abuse that these darkly comic characters embodied.
Garbage Pail Kids were quite dark, which I quite like in toys. But I used to collect those stickers, and there was one of a Garbage Pail Kid who was shaving the skin off on his face. And he had a razor, and he was pulling it down, and I think it stops about halfway, and the skin is peeling down and enfolding around. And it was actually, it sort of haunted me, that image.
Garbage Pail Kids, had a lot of those.
They were banned from our school.
Had series 2, 3, 4 and 5.
Very scary.
Gave series 2 and 3 away.
Still got loads of them.
To what I thought was a mate in need. Turns out he was a smackhead, so they probably got sold.
I think it's quite brave that they issued stuff that was that sinister. I don't know whether you get stuff like that now. I used to quite like them.